Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists, this is Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric.
Tropical Depression 3 forms in the Atlantic with a secondary invest right behind it, but all eyes are on the system that will likely become our second named storm of the season. We are live in your hurricane headquarters in the WFLA Now Stream Center with the 11 a.m. update that just came in from the National Hurricane Center. Hello there to you folks. JB here with you on a Monday edition of Tracking the Tropics with meteorologist Amanda Holly and our featured meteorologist today, Marcus Bagwell, joining us from WKRN in Nashville, Tennessee. Great to have Marcus back on the program. You see here in the center of your screen, Tropical Depression 3 has just formed, and we just seconds ago, Amanda, got in this new track from the National Hurricane Center. Why don't you break us down the very latest that we just got here, because this is obviously a system that we're paying very close attention to.
Yeah, we're paying close attention to it in an area that we typically wouldn't actually. This time of the year, June, is a very rare month for us to see development in this region. What I'm talking about is this main development region in between Africa and the Caribbean islands here. But ironically enough, we're tracking two possible storms. One, a storm that just formed minutes ago. Haven't even read the discussion from the National Hurricane Center yet because it just came out. And we're also tracking Invest 93L, this tropical wave here, which has a very low chance of developing. But Tropical Depression 3 just formed, so that is the one that we are going to focus on. But just wanted to give you a heads up, this wave behind it, a little less organized at this point, so it has that medium chance of developing. So let's focus on Tropical Depression 3. Again, graphics still updating here because it did come in moments ago, but this is the storm right here. So you can see it's pretty symmetrical, and we do have quite a few showers and thunderstorms associated with it and wrapped around the center of the storm. It's been taking its time gathering together over the past few days. We've been talking about it. It was a tropical wave, came off the coast of Africa, and now it is finally getting a little bit more organized. It's certainly feeding off those extremely warm waters in this region. We're talking record warm water temperatures for this time of year, and that's why we're seeing this development right now. A couple different factors, that's one of them. But there it is. That's the track for Tropical Depression 3. It has maximum winds of 35 miles per hour. It will likely become a tropical storm later today. That's when it will get that name of the B name. That'll be our next named storm, Barrette. And they do forecast that to happen sometime later on today. Stays a tropical storm up until Wednesday evening. Then the official forecast does have it becoming a Category 1 hurricane approaching the Caribbean islands, the Lesser Antilles here, and then possibly moving into the Caribbean. Now notice it doesn't curve north and it doesn't really keep going straight. It kind of splits the difference here. That's interesting from the National Hurricane Center because our long-range forecast models have it going both ways here. So we're talking about some of them recurving it out to sea and some of them taking it into the Caribbean Sea, and then some of them kind of having it down that middle of the road path. So a lot of uncertainty here, but it just formed. So those longer range forecast models, what we're talking about, the European, the GFS, that American model, they're going to start to get a better handle on the system of where it will go. But notice the timing here. We're talking about next Saturday, just entering possibly the Caribbean Sea. So we got a lot of time to watch this. So again, those forecast models will end up getting a little bit more organized, and they will be a little bit more concise on where it will go as the system continues to get organized. So this is a look at the GFS, the American model and the European model and their differences. And again, this is just one run of them. They've been all over the place because the system has been very disorganized. Now, the European model, this is the GFS model in green here. It does recurve it out to sea. It has the storm being a little bit stronger. If the storm is a stronger storm, it is likely going to recurve out to sea anyway. If it's a weaker storm like the European model is showing, it will likely continue on this path through the Caribbean Sea here. Could it take a path possibly down the middle? Absolutely. But again, this is next weekend that we are talking about the time frame here. So lots of time to watch this. The second wave, Invest 93L, just wanted to give you a satellite picture of this. Again, still looking like we're seeing a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity bubbling up off of it, but it has that medium chance of developing. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on the first wave, Tropical Depression 3 now, as it moves off to the west. We're just starting to get in some of those forecast models for Invest 93L as well, and we will show you those when those come in, but they are just starting to populate. Again, very rare for us to see this development in this region. June, typically we look pretty close to home. We don't typically see the development in the Atlantic this time of the year. So pretty interesting that we are seeing that now. But again, a combination of a couple of factors. We've been talking about those on Tracking the Tropics the past couple of weeks, actually.
Amanda Holly joining us here in the Stream Center. I want to go over to Marcus Bagwell, our featured meteorologist, joining us from WKRN. Marcus, have you had an opportunity to read the discussion on this? Because this all happened in the last 5 minutes. So we're processing this and digesting this really on stream for the first time. What are you noticing about Tropical Depression 3? And Marcus, we don't have your audio, unfortunately. You might have to unmute.
Okay. You got me now?
I got you, Marcus.
Okay, yeah. So what we're looking at now, all of this is brand new. So it's just taking some time for us to just come in and get the newest information. But it certainly is a storm that has the potential to strengthen. And I think one of the things, just like what we talked about last week with the increasing El Nino and how that may play a role in the tropical activity, it doesn't seem like, at least right now, that's not going to be the case because the waters that are in the Atlantic are a little bit warm. So definitely strengthening of this storm is anticipated. But as Amanda pointed out, this is so far out from having any sort of impact to the U.S. mainland, if it were to have an impact on the U.S. mainland, that I think we have to see what's going to transpire over the next 5 to 7 days or so as it moves through. But certainly in a favored area where wind shear doesn't appear to be too significant, where this storm will be able to strengthen and become easily perhaps our first hurricane of the season, maybe.
Yeah, and so Marcus brings up a really good point about timeline here. Let me quickly point out that we're going to be answering your questions, folks, on social media, especially the Facebook Live comment section. If you see us on Facebook Live and you see the scrolling comment section, you can use any of the hashtags on your screen, from hashtag AJB to hashtag AManda, hashtag AMarcus. And if you use that hashtag, we can answer your questions here live interactively. But really, people are paying close attention to when this would actually get closer to San Juan and actually closer to us here in the United States. You see there the timestamps, and Amanda is zooming in here to show us a better idea. We're talking about the work week just started, folks. It's Monday.
Right.
And this would still be well off away from us as of Saturday morning, Amanda.
Yeah, so we're talking about an 8 to 10 day time frame of, if we were to see any impacts, 8 to 10 days out still. So lots of time to watch this, lots of time for it to still, continue to get organized. And again, for those forecast models to have a better handle on it as the center continues to form and it continues that forward motion. Do we think that it's going to organize a little bit more? Yes. But again, it just really, there's a lot of question marks on where it will go. Will it recurve out to see if it's a little bit stronger, or will it stay weaker and kind of move into the Caribbean? Stay middle of the road like the National Hurricane Center is forecasting right now. One thing I will say, though, about this new track, this is one of the first tracks that we're getting from the National Hurricane Center this year, and it does go out 7 days. That is a new thing from the National Hurricane Center. In previous years, it has only gone out 5 days. So now we're getting that day 6 and day 7 time frame. That's why the track does look a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I want to make sure if I'm following that's very interesting, because we've been doing this show for years and we've never had a 7-day NHC forecast track. So is that shaded area at the end of the track, or is that just
that is day 7.
That is day 7.
So we're day 1, Tuesday's day 2, and then Saturday would be day 7.
Very interesting that we're getting a little bit more of a long range. Right. No, I think you got it right. I think you got it right. Marcus Bagwell, Amanda Holly, JB Buno here with you. Let's start taking some questions off of Facebook Live and do our very best to answer some of your questions out there. And it starts with Dan on the WFLA Facebook page saying hashtag Hey Amanda. And again, use those hashtags if you want your question to be featured on screen like this. How many days do you think it will take to fully develop? I'll bring up Marcus and Amanda for this, because this is according to that track that we just had on screen, Amanda, this is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane.
Yeah, so fully developed, I guess, is relative, right? So we're talking about a tropical system now that is organized. It has that center of circulation. So if you want to talk, broadly, it's already fully developed. But if you're talking about that named storm, when it gets that classification of Brett, probably later today. It does look like a pretty healthy storm. We are waiting for a couple more satellites to travel over it so that we can get some more readings from it. We're not sending hurricane hunters into this just yet, but it does look like we're going to see this be named later today or tomorrow. It's, again, a fairly organized system, so not long.
Yeah, and we already see a well-defined area of low pressure that's associated with this, and there's nothing that's really going to stop it from intensifying right now in this current point. So it is dependent upon what you mean by fully developed. If we're talking about a named storm, yeah, that's going to quickly happen as we've already seen this ramp up from an invest to TD number 3. So it's just a matter of time. But if you're looking for fully developed as in a monster storm, I mean, that's something that's still a long ways off, and that's where the forecast models will really get iffy if you take a look at those from today. It's going to take a couple of days to finally get this ingested into the model data.
And I will say that the forecast intensity models, some of them do bring it up to a Category 2. In previous days, some of them have had it a little bit stronger. But again, it's just kind of in that initial phase of organizing. So as we go through the next couple of days and it does really develop, gets that nice center of circulation, those winds get a little bit stronger, those forecast models will have a better handle on, the intensity. And again, as it moves into the Caribbean, it's not necessarily as favorable of an environment as where it is right now. So that's something good, too, that will help to keep the storm a little bit weaker.
Let's go to this question from Andy Michael. Hashtag Hey Amanda. Does this give us any clues into what may come this hurricane season? I'll bring Amanda and Marcus back up because we've been talking on previous editions of Tracking the Tropics as to how this season may shape up. Last episode, Amanda, we were talking about El Nino versus very, as we have the graphic on screen, very toasty ocean temperatures out there.
And which one's going to win out, Marcus kind of already alluded to this earlier. During an El Nino, typically we see really strong winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere over the Atlantic, which is why during an El Nino, we typically see fewer storms. But right now, we're just starting to see El Nino develop. So those strong winds, which are in relation to El Nino, haven't quite developed yet. So this area in the Atlantic is prime. We're talking about water temperatures that are normal for August and September. So record temperatures for right now. And they have plenty of energy to feed off of. Those upper level winds are relatively weak, which is why we've seen that organization over the past few days. So is it what we're going to see for the rest of the season? Time will tell with that one. I think, Marcus would probably agree with me that, we may end up seeing these winds get a little bit stronger and then activity may end up shutting off. That's what we can hope anyway, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And when the Climate Prediction Center put out that El Nino advisory going to the El Nino watch, I mean, the forecast for that clearly showed that it was only going to continue to increase. So El Nino, while we're transitioning into it, it's just getting started. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to translate, but you have the sea surface temperatures, which these storms just thrive off of. And so if they can continue to hold on to that, they'll encounter that. And once it gets past Cuba, which I find really interesting, you notice those sea surface temperatures begin to cool down a little bit more. That may help that storm begin to weaken at that point. But that's still a long ways off. But in the short term, with the wind shear not very strong right now, until it meets up with an upper trough in the coming days, this storm will easily hold strength and only get stronger before it gets closer to the Caribbean.
We're so hyper focused, and it's just human nature for us to be hyper focused on where we are. In Florida, or on the Gulf Coast, or where Marcus is in Nashville. But we also have to be very mindful that based on this current track, this could mean impacts, Amanda, for Puerto Rico, for the Dominican Republic, for Cuba, and so many other Caribbean nations as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we're still talking about the possibility of a Category 1 hurricane being near Puerto Rico 6 days from now on Saturday morning with 75-mile-per-hour winds. So that means that's we could be looking at impacts, tropical impacts from a hurricane in the Caribbean. That's all on the table. Absolutely. This is the first system. It's just beginning to develop, but it does look like it will strengthen. But there are still a lot of time for changes. And I do think that we're going to see this forecast track kind of shift to the north a little bit, maybe shift to the south a little bit, and those intensities will change with that as well.
Let's remind our audience, we're going to be spending the next 3 to 4 minutes. This is really a last call for your questions or your comments, even if you want to put on your weather hat at home, and if you see something on screen that you're curious about or you want to make an observation about, use any of the hashtags on your screen. You have two great experts, two meteorologists right in the palm of your hand. Amanda Holly joining us here from WFLA in Tampa. Marcus Bagwell is joining us from WKRN in Nashville, Tennessee. We will do our very best to get as many questions and comments on screen. It's really simple. If you use a hashtag with your question or your comment, we can animate it on screen like this. Teresa wants to know, hashtag Hey Amanda, do you think the much warmer waters through the Caribbean will potentially help the storm stay on that course?
So typically when we're talking about steering flows and what actually steers these storms, they obviously do like that warmer water, but that's not necessarily what steers them in one direction. It's all about the winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And as this system gets closer to the Caribbean and closer to the United States, those waters stay warm. So if it stays on that course, it will continue to feed off of those. But unfortunately, I guess fortunately in this case, we have a very weird wind pattern over the United States right now, which is actually going to keep the system weak. There's a lot of factors. The jet stream is all wiggly, if you will, and that is going to impact the storm if it gets closer to the United States. So the jet stream is really what steers these storms, not necessarily the warmer waters. But if it goes over warmer waters, it can certainly use those to stay a little bit stronger.
Yeah, and I may have missaid that wrong just a little bit, but the warmer waters is what the storms will thrive off of, and they can allow them to hold strength just a bit more. But the overall steering flow, Amanda's right, it's all due to the upper level winds. What happens there affects what happens at the ground level and at the surface. And I was looking at our forecasts for us here in Nashville as we get toward the end of the 7-day period. And the same time that we're looking at this storm getting close to the Caribbean near Puerto Rico and heading toward near the Dominican Republic area, there's a trough that's going to dig down from Canada, it looks like, and that may allow that storm to actually turn a little bit more to the east and northeast away from there. That's still 6-7 days out, and we're just now beginning to see some signs of that. So that's something that we're going to have to watch for. And if you're in Florida and if you're along the Gulf Coast area, you want to root for the trough to dig deeper. So that it will force this back out into the Atlantic and keep it there. But only time will tell. It's still very, very early in the process.
I think that's really the big thing to hit on, Marcus, and the big thing that Amanda has repeated several times over the course of this episode. Same thing that Marcus has repeated several times over the course of this episode. Everyone, with Ian last year, we saw there be a last-minute change in the track that pushed Ian more towards Fort Myers than towards the Tampa Bay area, and that was over a period of 36 hours. We're talking about something that is so far out in the Atlantic. I mean, we're talking a week or so until we're in the neighborhood of the Gulf of Mexico at the very earliest. So there's still many more days between now and this actually knocking on the door of some of the areas that we talked about on this live stream. A long way to go, and there will be many other Tracking the Tropics updates, many more live streams as we get closer to this system perhaps reaching a Category 1 hurricane status and a little bit closer to where we are in our section of the world. I'd like to give Amanda and Marcus the opportunity, some final thoughts, and if there's any other final questions that come in, we'll get them up on screen. But Amanda, what are you going to be paying close attention to in the hours and days ahead?
Yeah, really in the next 24 hours, I'm hoping that, those forecast models that I have on your screen right now are going to close up a little bit. They're not going to be nearly as spread out because as the system gets organized, the forecast models are going to be able to pinpoint where it is right now. And hopefully they'll get a better handle on that upper trough that, Marcus was just talking about, and those steering currents, because that will end up being key. But I do think that, this is an indication that it's hurricane season and that we need to watch it. Luckily, with this one, we have plenty of time to watch it. Again, we're talking about 8 to 10 days from now if it were to get a little bit closer. But hopefully we'll see it recurve out to sea. Obviously, we're going to keep an eye on every single one of those runs and definitely have more Tracking the Tropics episodes. But bottom line, I do think that we'll get Brett out of this, Tropical Storm Brett, if not Hurricane Brett.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with what Amanda just said. And one thing that's really unique about all of this is that this is why we call these tropical models spaghetti plots.
Yes.
It's spaghetti all over the place. There's nothing really confined or determined about it right now. It's just going every which way because the models have their own sort of formula that goes to that. And I think that's very important to recognize. And I think one takeaway too is that there's nothing to be alarmed about if you have family that's down in this area, Puerto Rico, near the Dominican Republic vicinity. You definitely want to make sure that they're preparing, and that's so important because we are right there in the thick of season. It only takes one storm for it to be devastating. So preparing is a great idea, even 6 days out. And I think that's one of the things that the National Hurricane Center wants from all of us is to prepare, just to be in the know and make preparations now. You don't want to wait till it's Saturday, and if it's projected to be over San Juan, you don't want it to be Saturday and you're just now preparing. So time now is going to be good for that. But from a meteorological perspective, we're going to have to watch and see if this trough from Canada can dig back down and go back out, take this system back out into the Atlantic. That's something that we'll root for, but we'll see how it plays out.
Our meteorologists across the country will be paying very close attention to Tropical Depression 3 as it gets closer to becoming Tropical Storm Brett and perhaps Hurricane Brett in the days ahead. I'd like to thank Marcus, our featured meteorologist, joining us from WKRN today from Nashville, and of course, mainstay here on Tracking the Tropics, meteorologist Amanda Holly. I'm JB Buno. Really important to note, our regular episodes are on Wednesday, but as we mentioned repeatedly on this show, we are on standby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during hurricane season to, of course, be ready with breaking news episodes as systems form, like Tropical Depression 3. But if you want up-to-date information right now in the palm of your hand, you go to trackingthetropics.tv for storm updates, the latest tracking models, and also all our episodes about hurricane preparedness from the Max Defender 8 team as part of Next Star Nation. So again, a big thank you to Marcus and Amanda. I'm JB Buno. More episodes ahead in the days and weeks ahead here on Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric. We'll see you next time from your hurricane headquarters.
Find Tracking the Tropics on these platforms. And for storm updates, the latest models, and helpful resources, visit trackingthetropics.tv.